Welcome to the second session in the Gita week. Yesterday's topic was Decode the Mind, and today the topic is Art of Self-Motivation. So friends, especially in the last couple of years, when you go around, people are conversing and they are talking, and their general query is, when will things get back to normal? So wherever you go, you hear this familiar question being posed, when are things going to get back to normal? The question is, what is normal? So when people are asking, things have to get back to normal, what do they mean by normal? What do you mean by normal? The world was in Stone Age thousands of years back. Was that normal? World wars happened in the world. Was that normal? There was a time when there was no internet. Was that normal? Even today, if you examine carefully, what is happening in Syria, is that normal? What is happening in Russia, is that normal? What is happening in Japan, is that normal? Which is normal? So if you carefully analyze, you understand that there is no such thing as normal in the external world. So anyone looking for normality in the external world will be disappointed, because there's no such thing as normal in the external world. The world is in a constant flux of change. Another word for world is change. As far as the world is concerned, there will be certainty and uncertainty. There will be peace, there will be war. There will be health, there will be disease. There will be joy, there will be sorrow. These pairs of opposites are in the world and they are unavoidable. World is not a static millennium. It's constantly changing. So if you examine what's been happening in the last couple of years, there's been a seismic change, a paradigm shift. And all the plans that people have had has been thrown out of the window. Robert Burns, the famous poet of Scotland, he says, the best laid plans of mice and men gang aft agley. The best laid scheme of mice and men gang aft agley. See that on the screen. The famous words of Robert Burns. Gang aft agley means often it goes wrong. So you can have your plans, you can make your plans, but there is no guarantee that the plans will come to fruition. Nature has its own plans. So there are no guarantees in life, no normalities in the world. Learn to take life as it comes. Learn to adjust. Learn to adapt to the changing world. The only place you can find normality is when you go within. A normal person, who is a normal person, is a self-developed person, a self-realized person. The greatest praise that Shakespeare confers on Brutus, when Brutus dies, Mark Antony gives a speech, and the greatest praise Shakespeare heaps on Brutus is, nature might stand up to this world and say, this was a man. Here was a man. Here was a woman. Just a man. That's a normal person. Who is this normal person? A self-developed person. And what is self-development? Self-development is when you are not dependent upon the world. The world is constantly changing. The world is constantly moving, but you ought not to get affected by the changing world. Then you're self-developed. Then you're self-realized. So a person who is not dependent upon the world is not affected by the fluctuations in the world. Otherwise, when you're dependent, you have tied yourself to the world. Whatever happens to the world will happen to you. That's exactly what is happening. Constantly, we are being tossed like a helpless boat in the ocean. So it's high time you examine and consider what is it that is happening to you. You find people are dependent upon the looks. If someone comments, "Oh, you put on some weight. Oh my God," you won't sleep for a week. If someone gives a comment like that, you won't sleep for a week. There are people who weigh themselves every day. They got bathroom scales every day. They go and weigh themselves. Some people you can notice when they walk past cars or windows, they always keep looking at it. They look at the reflection. At any windows, any cars, they all look at the reflection. So concerned about looks. So you're dependent upon your looks. You're dependent upon others' opinions. What is this attachment people have towards likes? Following. Oh, I got so many likes. The celebrities are so caught up. They have separate teams running their channels. And if few people don't like, you feel it's better to commit suicide. You almost feel like that. So dependent upon their looks, dependent upon opinions, dependent upon your family. God forbid anything happens to the family, you're finished. So dependency is not the life of a human being. You ought to contact the world, you've got to interact with people, you've got to enjoy the world, but not get dependent upon the world. Spiritual development is inversely proportional to your dependency upon the world. In other words, as you develop spiritually, less and less you are dependent upon the world. So if a person is more dependent upon the world, it only indicates that person is not spiritually developed. You can have all the knowledge in the world, you might have read all the scriptures in the world, but if you're dependent, then you are not spiritually developed. So see the chart on the screen. The relationship between dependency and your spiritual evolution. It's a simple chart. So on one side is line AB, which is human evolution. Other side is CD, which is dependency upon the world. So a person who is at zero evolution, 100% dependent. And as a person evolves to 25, to 50, to 75, to 100, the dependency keeps on reducing. When you hit 100% evolution, you're 0% dependent upon the world. That is the definition of a self-realized soul, a God-realized soul. Human perfection is no dependency upon the world. As I said, that does not mean you don't contact the world. That does not mean you don't relate to your family. You have your family, but you should not get dependent upon it. You have your wealth, but you shouldn't get dependent upon it. It's a beautiful metaphor given in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 5, verse 10 of the Bhagavad Gita, he gives this beautiful metaphor. He says, how should we function in the world? You should function like a lotus leaf in water. Padma patramivambasa. Like a lotus leaf. A lotus leaf is born in water, it lives in water and dies in water, but it is not stained by water. It's got a smooth surface. Water droplets don't stick to it. Similarly, you are born in the world, we are living in this world, and one day we'll die, but we ought not to get affected by the world. That is the dignity and prestige of a human being. So the question is, can one be motivated in an uncertain world, in an ever-changing world? Is it possible to be motivated? The answer to that is yes. You can be motivated, provided you're not dependent upon the world. Opposite of dependency is to be self-sufficient. Learn that word. Self-sufficiency is opposite of dependency. A person who is self-sufficient is not affected by the world. See that on the screen. A dependent person is affected. A self-sufficient person is not affected. Mahatma Gandhi says, any fool can find Shanti in Shanti, but you need a wise person to find Shanti in Ashanti. Shanti means peace. Ashanti means agitation. Any fool can find peace in peace. So if everything is all right, there is no terrorism, there is no virus, there is no poverty, everything is fine, you say, oh, I'm all right, I'm happy. Anybody can say that. But when there's all this chaos going on in the world, if you can claim that, yes, I'm happy, according to Gandhi, that's a wise person. Therefore, the art of self-motivation is the art of self-management. The fundamental principle of living is to manage yourself. Self-management is self-motivation. See that on the screen. Whoever can manage themselves can motivate themselves. If you can't manage yourself, you can't motivate yourself. You can have everything around you. You can have the best of family. You can have the best of wealth. You can have the best of weather, everything around, and yet you will not feel motivated because you're not managed yourself. So motivation is internal, not external. A person who is unaffected by the changing world. So what happens when you become dependent upon the world? How does it affect your mind? So what you have to understand is that the moment you're dependent upon the world, your mind fluctuates. Your mind is agitated, exactly like a cone which is resting on the tip. If you take a cone and balance it on its tip, you've got to hold that cone. The moment you leave that cone, it'll fall down. Similarly, a person who's dependent upon the world, everything has to go all right for the persons to say, oh, how are you today? I'm all right. In England, they say, not too bad. In America, they would say, oh, great, man. It all means the same thing. So, but to say that everything has to go according to plan. If one thing doesn't go according to plan, you collapse. Like a cone resting on its tip. A slightly evolved person is like the same cone resting on the side. When the cone is resting on the side and you tap the cone will start rotating and eventually come to a stop. So this is the mind of a person who is less dependent, but he's still dependent. So something happens, it agitates. A perfect mind, a perfect human being is like a cone which is resting on its base. A cone that is resting on its base, nothing affects it. Nothing can make it fall. That is the mind of a perfect human being. See those diagrams on the screen. The 3 states of mind. So figure 1 is a restless mind where a person is completely dependent upon the world. You're at the mercy of the world. Whatever happens to the world agitates you. In figure 2, you're less dependent, but still dependent. Therefore, you're still affected. But in figure 3, you're self-sufficient. You're not dependent. You have a perfect mind. You're a perfect human being. Oliver Wendell Holmes defines such a person. He says, who is this perfect human being? For him, in vain, the envious seasons roll, who bears eternal summer in his soul. What is perfection? Who is a perfect human being? For him, for such a perfect human being, in vain, the envious seasons roll. The seasons are not affecting him. Why? Because he bears eternal summer in his soul. For him in vain, you see the quotation on the screen. For him in vain the envious seasons roll, who bears eternal summer in his soul. That is perfection. The primary obligation for every one of us is to develop ourselves. Yesterday, we examined what was Vedanta. Vedanta was that ancient knowledge which is contained in the Bhagavad Gita, which was given out 10,000 years back. The word Vedanta literally means end of knowledge. Vedanta is derived from two Sanskrit words, Veda and Anta. See that on the screen. Veda means knowledge, Anta means end. Vedanta is end of knowledge. So Vedanta is just knowledge. It's just a technique of living. And when you learn the knowledge of Vedanta, you become a better human being. And when you become a better human being, that's the best service we can do to our family, to our community, to our country. See, suppose you take care of your health. What will happen? You don't burden others. You don't burden your family. You don't burden the health service because you have taken the responsibility and you're managing your health. It's as simple as that. If you take the responsibility of managing yourself, you're less a burden to others. You become a beacon light. You become a shoulder for others to cry on. Now what is happening? You're crying everywhere. You want help. You are dependent on others. So you become a lighthouse. The waves can crash at its feet, but the lighthouse is firm and it gives light to the travelers. Swamiji proclaims, give your personality a lift. You lift the whole world. So how can you help others? You lift yourself, the world will lift itself. See the quotation. Give your personality a lift. You lift the whole world. In the Dhyana Shlokas, which is the invocation to the Bhagavad Gita, there is a fabulous verse that explains what is the power of Vedanta. When you imbibe this knowledge of Vedanta, you can do wonders. You can create miracles. And the verse says that this knowledge is so powerful that it can make a mute speak. It can make a lame scale mountains. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande paramananda madhavam. The knowledge of Vedanta can make a mute speak, a lame scale mountains. A carpenter's boy became the great Christ. Siddhartha became the great Buddha. Naren became the great Vivekananda. An ordinary person transforms into an extraordinary person. How? Just by imbibing this knowledge. So even if you imbibe this knowledge a little bit, you become free from worries and anxieties. You become cheerful, contented, successful in whatever you do. So Vedanta helps us in two ways. First thing is, it teaches us who you are. Who am I? And the second question that Vedanta answers is how to relate to the world. Two important questions that all of us have to decipher. Who am I and how should we relate to the world? Yesterday, when we introduced the Bhagavad Gita, I explained the entire Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between the two words, dharma mama, mama dharma. The first verse in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita starts with dharma kshetre kurukshetre. And the last word or the last verse in the Bhagavad Gita ends with the word Mama. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between the two words Dharma Mama, Mama Dharma. Mama Dharma means my nature. And that's the investigation in the Bhagavad Gita, to find out what your nature is. Our nature, our personality is like an iceberg. I don't mean that you all have cold personalities. In fact, it's literally true, because I believe it's freezing in South Africa. But I don't literally mean in that sense. Iceberg in the sense that 1/3 of the iceberg is what you see outside. 2/3 of the iceberg, you don't see it. Similarly, what you see when you meet another person is only 1/3 of his personality, which is his outer personality, the physical body. 2/3 of the personality you don't see, which is the inner personality. So every one of us is made up of outer personality, and within the outer personality is an inner personality. The relationship between the outer and the inner personality is the relationship between a hardware and software of a computer. The hardware is run by the software. If there is no software, there is no use having a hardware. Hardware is the outer personality, the software is the inner personality. And that inner personality is what is the worth of a human being, the character of a human being. The worth of a human being is not the outer personality, but what lies within. Just as the engine of a car is what defines the car. You buy a brand new BMW and it comes with a Fiat engine. Externally, it is all beautiful. It's got the logo, but internally, it doesn't have the BMW engine. No sensible person will buy it. So what determines a human being is not external, but internal. So what is this inner personality? What makes that inner personality? The two equipments that make up your inner personality, they are known as the mind and intellect. If at all anyone develops themselves, they are only developing the physical body. Nobody develops their mind and intellect, because nobody knows what the mind and intellect is. So here's an opportunity for you all to learn it. What is the mind? What is the intellect? The mind is an equipment that has feelings. It has emotions. It has likes and dislikes. And opposite of the mind is the intellect, which thinks, reasons, decides, judges. Mind is the feeling equipment. Intellect is the thinking equipment. Please see that on the screen. So what is the difference between the mind and the intellect? Mind is impulses, feelings, emotions, likes and dislikes. It's there in every one of us. Similarly, there is an intellect which thinks, reasons, discerns, and decides. So the question you need to be asking yourself is, am I acting on the impulses and feelings of my mind, or am I acting on the reason and judgment of my intellect? That will make all the difference in your life. You go to a party and they give you a cake and you're very fond of the cake and you enjoy a piece of cake. Automatically, what does the mind do? I like another piece. There's nothing wrong in having another piece. You have another piece, the mind says another piece. So the intellect at some point comes in and says, enough, no more. But if your mind is stronger, you end up overeating and then come back home and then you regret, why did I overeat? But if your intellect is strong, you will stop it then and there and says no more. Mind says, I want to go and hug my family. I want to go and hug my relatives. Intellect says, maybe it's still not the right time. Please wait a little longer. So the mind in us is like the child. A child in a sweet store. It just wants everything. But the intellect is the adult which has to manage the child, which has to govern the child. So all the actions you're performing Anybody performs any actions in the world, it comes either from the mind or from the intellect. Therefore, every one of us have got two choices in life. And what are these choices? One choice comes from the mind, another choice comes from the intellect. Whatever decisions you're making either based on your mind or the intellect. Therefore, you live by choice, not by chance. Please see that on the screen. The law of life is that you live by choice, not by chance. Whatever you're doing and whatever happens to you is by your choice. Whatever choices you made in the past is what you are today. Similarly, what you will be in the future depends upon what choices you make today. And one wrong choice is all it takes. One wrong choice we make, we've had it. Social media, you post one wrong post, one wrong image you post there, your life is gone. Everybody has heard of Netflix. When Netflix was a fledgling company, it was not popular. It was just coming up. It was offered to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a video rentals company. And Blockbuster CEO laughed at Netflix and said, "Who is going to buy your company?" He laughed. Today, Netflix is $1 billion company. Blockbuster has gone bust. One wrong choice they made, the company's gone. So one choice can make your life, one choice can mar your life. You make your life, you mar your life. You are the architect of your fortune, you are the architect of your misfortune. In England, there was a case of a lorry driver who was on the motorway. And when he was driving, he just happened to look at his phone to switch the tracks. He was listening to music. He just wanted to switch the tracks. As he looked to switch the tracks, he didn't realize that the traffic had come to a halt in front of him because there was a traffic jam. He didn't see that. So he just switching the tracks. He hit a car right in front of him and the whole family perished. Father, mother, and the two children. And he was jailed. And he said, "Listen, I can't sleep for the rest of my life." One wrong choice, one mistake, you're gone. So it's very important to think carefully before you act, not to be impulsive. And people are making impulsive decisions by the dozens. Got to think. Follow the carpenter's rule. You all know what the carpenter's rule is. The carpenter's rule is measure twice, cut once. Measure twice, cut once. See that on the screen. You've applied the same principle in life. Think twice, act once. Similarly, when you're interacting with others, when you're relating to others, how should you relate to others? Shakespeare gives a beautiful advice. And what Shakespeare says is, "Give every man thine ear, but few thy voice." Listen to everyone. Speak to a chosen few. See the famous words of Shakespeare. Give every man thine ear. Listen to everyone. Be open-minded, but speak to a few people who are interested to have your advice. So the mind is powerful. The mind has its likes and dislikes. The mind has its emotions. There's nothing wrong with likes and dislikes. There's nothing wrong with the emotions. You don't need to suppress it, but you need to control it. You need to manage it. Benjamin Franklin says, when passion drives you, let reason hold its reins. If passion drives you, let reason hold its reins. See that on the screen. The famous words of Benjamin Franklin. So passion can drive you, but let reason hold the reins. That was the metaphor of the chariot, which we discussed yesterday. Krishna holds the reins and pulls back the horses. Similarly, you've got to pull back the mind. Using what? Using your intellect. When the mind overpowers the intellect, what happens is you get into stress. Everybody is stressed. It's a question of less or more. But what is stress? Everybody says, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. But what is stress? Stress is when the mind overpowers your intellect. And the moment you're stressed, stress destroys motivation. Stress kills motivation. But the blunder that people make is they believe that it is the world that is causing stress. You interview anybody in the world, right from a president to a man in the street, and you ask him what is causing you stress, they will all point the finger at something external. And everyone believes it is the world that causes stress. World cannot cause stress. What causes stress is your wrong expectations. You have a wrong expectations that people should wish you on your birthday. If somebody doesn't wish you on your birthday, you get stressed. You have a wrong expectation that you should not fall ill. When you fall ill, you get stressed. You have a wrong expectation that there shouldn't be terrorism in the world. There shouldn't be viruses in the world. When you have those wrong expectations, you're stressed. But if you assess the world correctly and you accept these are facts of life, you won't get stressed. You can deal with the situation. You can deal with the problem, but there's no need to get stressed. So it is not the world that causes stress, but how you relate to the world. Steve Irwin was an Australian television presenter, and he was famous in dealing with crocodiles. And he used to go and treat crocodiles like pets. That's how he used to deal with them. He used to go and stroke them, and he knew exactly how to relate to it. Now, you and I can't do that because we don't know how to relate. But he knows how to relate. So he related to it beautifully. He kept it completely under his control. So it is not the world. It is not people, but how you relate to them. How many of you all know how to surf? I don't mean web surfing. I mean the actual surfing in the seas. Surfing, when you watch it, is such a wonderful sport, but you dare not try it if you don't know it. It is so scary. But when you watch others do it, the best surfers, they look for large waves. When you look at the waves, it's scary. But they know how to relate to it, and therefore they enjoy it. So what causes enjoyment is how you relate to it. Oh, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold. They're all affected by the weather. It is not the weather that is causing stress, but how you relate to it. You know, I learned it when I first came to England. Throughout, I'm from South India, and you all know South India, there's only 3 types of weather: hot, hotter, hottest. So all my life, I've been looking for cold weather, for some snow. So when I came to England, I was so excited. I was so happy. I was so looking forward to the cold weather, looking at snow. And when I came to England, the whole conversation was summer, 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 summer. I said, my God, what's wrong with these people? So I thought there's something wrong with these people. I was looking forward to the cold weather. And when it first snowed, it was as if I was in heaven. I went out in my pajamas. In the morning, I was enjoying the snow. And now I've been in England for 21 years. And when I talk to my folks in India, I'm telling them, oh, summer is so good. Summer is so nice. They are thinking, what's wrong with me? You understand? There's nothing to do with the weather. It is how you relate to it. So when you're in a place where it's summer, you're cursing summer, you look forward to winter. When you're in a place which is winter, you're looking forward to summer. It's nothing to do with the weather. See, right now we are having this talk and the whole team, everyone is thinking, my God, what will happen if the internet crashes? If the broadband crashes? You understand? But fortunately, the whole team has got the knowledge of Vedanta. We're not affected. Externally, we are saying it. Internally, it's different. Externally, we can say it. We're not affected. So, what is stress? How do you define stress? Stress is nothing but mental agitations caused due to unfulfilled desires. Learn the definition of stress today. You won't get it anywhere else. What is stress? Stress is nothing but mental agitations caused due to unfulfilled desires. See that on the screen. It is not the world that is causing stress. It's your own mind. A self-developed person who's got a perfect control over his mind will never get stressed. Stress is internal, not external. Nothing in the world can cause stress. Only thing that can cause stress is your mind. And that's what John Milton, the famous English poet, he says, your mind can make a hell of heaven or a heaven of hell. Hell or heaven are not geographical places. They are states of mind. See that on the screen. The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Similarly, friends, just as the world cannot cause stress, similarly, work cannot cause stress. People are cursing work. Oh, I've got to work from home. I've got too many things piled on. Oh, I don't say. You're stressed because of work. It is not work that is causing stress. What causes stress in work is anxiety for the result. The moment you become anxious about the result, you get stressed. An athlete who is competing for the 100 meters dash in the Olympics final, if the athlete is thinking about the gold medal, if he is obsessed by the gold medal, if he's anxious by the gold medal, he will never be able to win that race. The more you're thinking about the result, the less you'll be successful. One of the most famous cricketers, for those who know cricket, will know that it's Sachin Tendulkar. But what many of you all may not know that is Tendulkar has a dubious record of getting out at 90s. He's got out of maximum number of times in his 90s. And that's why the term nervous 90s is coined in cricket. When the player comes into his 90s, when the batsman comes into his 90s, he gets stressed. Why should you get stressed? You should be able to see the ball clearly because you've been batting at the crease for so long. Why are you getting suddenly stressed? Because you want to get the century. You're anxious about the result. You get stressed. Invariably, they get out. Even the best of players are not exempt from that. Serena Williams has won 23 Grand Slams. It's an incredible record, but she's anxious to get one more because if she gets one more, she'll equal the all-time record of Margaret Court. Last 4 years, she's trying and trying and trying. The more she's anxious, she will not get it. So it is not action which is causing stress. It is result orientation. Oh, exam pressure. Exam pressure. What is exam pressure? Exam pressure is a misnomer. Exam cannot produce pressure. Interview cannot produce pressure. What is exam pressure? What is interview pressure? Anxiety for the result. oh, what will happen if I don't write this exam properly? I hope I write the exam properly. The more you're thinking about that, that causes pressure, not the exam, not the interview. So at work, if you apply this knowledge, you develop a spirit of vacation in your vocation. You can work, you can do all that is necessary. End of the day, you're relaxed. The famous words of Swami Ramatirtha. If there's one line you need to learn in this talk, if you forget everything else, doesn't matter. Remember this one line. And the famous words of Swami Ramatirtha was, intense work is rest. Everybody wants to avoid work to get rest, but nobody understands that it is work that can cause rest, work that can give you peace. Why are you cursing work? Work is noble. See the words of the Swami. Intense work is rest. So the paradox that you find in the world is that there are people like the great Nelson Mandela, passed away at the age of 95, and he was working till the end. He was motivated to work right till the end. The Queen of England, she's 94, she's working. Swami Parthasarathy is 94, he's working. So you find people who are in the 90s, they're motivated, they're working. And on the other hand, you find people who are 16, who are 18, who are complaining, oh, we are bored, oh, we are fatigued, oh, we're deflated, we're depressed. So what you have to understand is motivation has nothing to do with age. Motivation has nothing to do with your stage in life. It has nothing to do with your circumstance or your community. So where does motivation come from? The word motivate means to provide with a motive. The word motivate means to provide with a motive. So how do you motivate yourself? You need an ideal. You need a goal. You need a purpose. And the moment you have a purpose in life, it energizes you. It elevates you. If you don't have any purpose, you lose your motivation. You find young activists like Greta Thunberg, like Malala. They're doing great work in the world because they have a purpose, they have a cause. You see the Paralympics is going on in Tokyo now. People who are disabled, they are not thinking they are disabled. They are performing beautifully. They are motivated. And when the virus broke out, the scientists all around the world, they cooperated. For the very first time, the scientists came together to work for the vaccine. They were motivated because there was a global cause. So when there is an ideal, when there is a cause, when there is a purpose, there is tremendous motivation. So when people complain of loneliness, you find loneliness is causing mental health problems all around the world. The old people are complaining, the young people are also complaining of loneliness. Loneliness has nothing to do with the world, has nothing to do with company. A famous writer says, loneliness is not lack of company, loneliness is lack of purpose. See that on the screen. Guillermo Maldonado. Loneliness is not lack of company, it's lack of purpose. So when you have a purpose, how can you feel lonely? You fix an ideal, and higher the ideal, greater the motivation. If you fix an ideal as your community, you fix an ideal of your country, higher the ideal, the greater is your motivation. So what are these ideals? And where can we start with? Bhagavad Gita gives us an idea on where to start, how to start. It gives us the highest ideals. in the form of the 3 yogas. So what should be your ideal in life? If you examine these 3 yogas, you can learn from it. So see the yogas on the screen. There are 3 yogas: Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is the path of action. Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion. Jnana Yoga is the path of the intellect. Why 3 yogas? You may ask, because you have 3 equipments which you have already defined: physical body, mind, intellect. Karma Yoga is at the level of the physical body. Bhakti Yoga is at the level of the mind. Jnana Yoga is at the level of the intellect. So what is that you need to do in these 3 yogas? People have strange concepts about the 3 yogas. It's very simple if you analyze it carefully. Karma Yoga, the path of action. To understand Karma Yoga, you have to understand that you have 3 types of actions. Every one of us can perform 3 types of actions. And what are these 3 types of actions? Selfish, unselfish, and selfless. When your actions are propelled by selfish desires, you are performing selfish actions. When your actions are propelled by unselfish desires, you perform unselfish actions. And when your actions are not propelled by any desires, it's a selfless action. Selfless action is the highest form of action. See the 3 types of actions on the screen. Action with a selfish desire, action with an unselfish desire, action without desire. That is selfish, unselfish, selfless. So Karma Yoga is to perform unselfish and selfless actions. What is unselfish action? What is selfless action? To have the thought, what can I do for others? The first thought when you wake up, the last thought when you go to bed, what can I do for others? But all the time your mind is thinking about what can I get from others? And that is the difference between a selfish action and an unselfish action. John F. Kennedy, the late American president, said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you are doing for your country. See the words of John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Can you do something? If you can do something, do it. You may say, of course I pay my taxes. You pay your taxes? Yes, because if you don't pay your taxes, they'll throw you out of the country. But is anybody in this audience happy to pay the taxes? If anybody in the audience is happy to pay the taxes, salute you. You are hiring accountants to see how you can avoid taxes. So whatever we can give, we have to give gracefully, give happily. So when we are driving on the road, you give way to the buses, happily. Give way to the oncoming traffic, happily. So unselfishness is not so much the action, but the attitude. The attitude of wanting to give, wanting to help, wanting to serve. So in real life, you need to distinguish between duties and rights. So if your actions are led by duties, it is Karma Yoga. If your actions are led by rights, it is a selfish, self-centered action. So what is your attitude? So you could be a lawyer, you could be an entertainer, you could be an architect, you could be a parent, you could be a husband, you could be anybody. But what is your attitude? What is my duty towards others? So if the lawyer thinks in terms of his duty to the clients, if the doctor thinks in terms of his duties to the patients, the entertainer thinks in terms of, oh, these people have had a rough day. How can I make them laugh? How can I make them feel light? He's doing Karma Yoga. A husband thinks in terms of duties towards the wife. So Karma Yoga is not just giving money to charities. Yes, of course you do that. But it is also to incorporate that attitude in your day-to-day life. And how do you know you're performing karma yoga? Is you'll be cheerful. That's why we ask you all to switch the videos, because we want to check how many of you all are smiling, how many of you all are laughing. So be cheerful, to be happy is the result of karma yoga. Secondly, bhakti yoga is the path of devotion. Again, people have strange concepts of what bhakti is. Bhakti is just a feeling of devotion. How do you feel towards others? How do you feel towards God's children? There was a person who used to attend the classes, and he told me about his young son. And the family came back from a holiday, and the son was only 6-year-old, young boy, small boy. And the family, they came from the airport in the taxi. They came with all the luggage, everything, and they got down from the taxi, and they were going to their house. They were about to unlock the house. And immediately that young boy, he runs to the neighboring house. And they said, hey, Kavi, where are you going? No, 1 minute, mom. He goes there, and he knocks at the door. And an elderly couple is there inside. They open the door. He's asking, George, Mr. George, are you well? Are you okay? He said, yes, son, I'm very fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all. He just so sweetly inquired, and he came back. The parents didn't tell him. He did it on his own. The first thought, even before he could enter his home, is inquiring about the neighbors. That boy is practicing bhakti yoga. Sadly, the same boy passed away due to COVID. Just recently passed away. So bhakti yoga is how do we feel towards others. That's why Christ's famous statement was, love thy neighbors. Start with your family. Start with the environment around. So how do we feel towards other species who are less fortunate? Towards other creatures? We kill animals just for the sake of a taste. George Bernard Shaw, the Irish playwright, says, animals are my friends. I do not eat my friends. See that on the screen. So bhakti yoga, this is bhakti yoga. To consider animal as your friends. See, whatever we have been doing to animals is coming and hitting us back. In the past, when people used to come to our homes, we used to tell them, look here, you can freely come to our house because the pets are vaccinated. Today, we have to tell them, we are vaccinated, you can freely come home. Pets don't need to get vaccinated from COVID. We need to get vaccinated from COVID. Look at how karma functions. So, bhakti yoga is that gratitude. What gratitude do we have? Nature has given us so many things, and yet we are not satisfied. We want one more. We want one more. Sadi, the great Sufi saint, he says, I had no shoes and complained until I met a man who had no feet. I had no shoes and complained. See the famous words of Sadi. I had no shoes and complained until I met a man who had no feet. When you look at people who have less than you, you wonder, what am I complaining? And thirdly, Jnana Yoga. What is Jnana Yoga? Is the ability to inquire, the ability to question, the ability to think. Jnana Yoga is not just reading books and reading scriptures. That is not Jnana Yoga. But are you aware of your intellect? Are you developing your intellect? Today, there's so much of information in the world. Everybody is well informed. And the more you gain information, you only become intelligent. But you may be intelligent and not have an intellect. So please learn this difference, crucial difference between intellect and intelligence. Intellect is your inner clarity. Intelligence is external knowledge. See the difference on the screen. So people may have intelligence, but they may not have an intellect. In England, people who are scientists, there was a team which set the lockdown rules. And the first person to break the lockdown rules was one of the scientists of the team. The fellow who set the lockdown rules broke the lockdown rules. He has all the intelligence, but no intellect. So you may be a brilliant person, you may be a learned person, you may be a knowledgeable person. That means nothing. But do you have the capacity to think? There's a cardiologist we know who is very close to our family, and he smokes. And he tells us, don't tell others, because nobody will come to him. Because he is giving the advice to his patients, don't smoke, don't smoke. And he is not able to stop his smoking. He can't control his mind, but he's a brilliant cardiologist. So intellect is different from intelligence. Mark Twain, a famous philosopher, he says, I have never let my schooling interfere with my education. See that on the screen. He's a humorist and a philosopher. I have never let my schooling interfere with my education. What he means is, when you go to schools and universities, you only gain intelligence. That is not enough. But you need to educate yourself in life. You need to educate yourself about life. And where do you get that? You get that through Vedanta. So Vedanta develops the intellect. It prepares you for life. Dear friends, when the gadgets are connected to the internet, when the gadgets are connected to the internet, you get a smart device. You get a smart phone. Similarly, when you're connected to your intellect, you get a smart human. You get a smart individual. So the intellect can transform your life. So this knowledge of Vedanta is like insurance. So many of you all may be thinking, listen, everything is all right with me. By God's grace, everything is going fine. Yes, we are very happy, everything is going fine. But what will you do when something goes wrong? Are you prepared? Can you face the turbulence? So Vedanta is like insurance. When your factory is on fire, you can't run and say, please give me insurance, please give me insurance. The company will not insure you. You need to insure yourself before the eventuality. So treat this knowledge as an insurance. You take dental insurance. Similarly, you need mental insurance. Insure your mind, insure your intellect against worries and anxieties. So to be prepared for eventualities is a Vedantin. To expect eventualities is a pessimist. So you don't have to expect eventualities, but be prepared for it. If and when something happens, you are not affected. You are strong. And not only you are strong, you can help others. You become a beacon of light for others to follow. So I'm concluding the talk here, but this shouldn't be the conclusion of your knowledge. So it should be the start of your knowledge. You take up this knowledge, take up the books, attend the classes, and do whatever is necessary to build yourself with your life. And as we had announced yesterday, there are several classes happening in South Africa. But again, these classes are online, so the whole of Africa can access these classes. And the numbers are no barrier. Any number of people can attend because we can accommodate any number of people in our online classes. So feel free to come and learn this, and we wish you the best.